life. Then we'll talk about when she was a part of the Department of Psychiatry at McGill. And that led then to the creation of the Thomas Merton Center here in Georgeville. Then we'll talk about when it was here in Georgeville, within the Merton Center, the rules, rituals, life within this center. And then when the center closed, we'll talk about post-Merton Center here in Georgeville, what happened, that is, what happened to Peter and Linda Zabeth as a result of that. And then we'll talk about the Thomas Merton Centers internationally today, which has been mentioned by Keith. And then conclusion, yes, a conclusion. My personal comments you may find very surprising if you haven't fallen to sleep by then. And then we'll entertain questions, as Keith had said, about your memories of Linda, Peter Zabeth, or Merton Center itself, and we're open to a question period and answer this question as much as we can. So we are going to start then 4 sources of information for this presentation of the Merton Center in Georgeville, and that is that's correct. Put the next one up. That is absolutely correct. In the center, as you see, by Barbara Rogers, and the other one, Unveiling of God by Linda Zabeth. It's basically autobiography. I rely a lot on that. That's one of the sources. So I want you to note the cover of the book on the left, a gold circle in a brown square. It becomes later very important in this talk. That is, this book will be shown again for that purpose. The third item, I use internet search, which of course, as you find, very helpful these days. And then I did a land title research in terms of Canton de Stansted, the searching of the actual properties, which you will see. Also, I had a meeting with Father Peter Zabeth at his parish church in Pierrefonds, Quebec in February 2020, which is also very helpful. So those are the 4 sources of information I am using in this talk today. Now, let's establish the location of the Merton Center. Where is it? So via internet, I found various locations. One, first it was on Magog Lake, then it was beside the Abbey, and the third, East Road in Georgeville from local knowledge. From that, I found the address as being RR3 Magog, Quebec, postal code J1X3W4. So technically you can say it really was not in Georgeville. But let's go to the next slide where we have a area, what you see there as RR3 Magog. So in the lighter colored area, bordered by the red, is RR3 Magog. You'll notice on the left, you see Georgeville and Highway 247, and you see Fitch Bay on the right. So within that light colored area, we will find where this Merton Center was located. So what I want you to look at, it's not too visible, but it is somewhat. From Georgeville, there's a white line that runs over and heads off to East Road and dead ends there. You probably are familiar with it, and it runs over to Highway 247. That's where the Merton Center will be located. So if we go to the next slide, I will then show you here the camera. Here's McGowan Road. It ends up at T-joint at East Road, and the camera is pointing in the right direction where you'll find the Merton Center, about within 1 or 2 kilometers on the left-hand side. And so now we're going to go to the land registry, which I found at Canton de Stansted, and let's go to the next slide. That one is lot 93 of 3 lots in total. In fact, you'll find out. What is to note there is Dame Linda Parsons in July 69, purchased the property. Also notice way at the bottom in 1986, the property then was sold. Now, what's very important to note is when the Merton Center actually discontinued here in Georgeville is a look at circle there, Dame A. Dickerson. That is the date that it was not purchased, leased and rented. And we'll talk. And A. Dickerson is Audrey Dickerson, who lives on McGowan Road and still is active with us today. So that is one that's rather important. And that was the one, lot 93, which contained the buildings. The next 2 are lots that have been added to as part of the total purchase. So we'll go to the next slide. And that one, you'll see again, 69 is the purchase date from Dame Parsons. And notice that because of marriage change, whatever, at the end you see Linda Prozac Zabeth, okay? That was the date then it was sold. And a third piece of property along with that is the next slide, which is going to be 110. If you notice the same date again in July 69, and again back in 85, when Linda Prozac Zabeth had sold the property and it was gone. But they were gone as a Merton Center, as I you noted there with respect to Dickerson renting the property at that time, which we'll talk about at that time when it occurs. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Now, that is a painting of the Thomas Merton Center for Contemplative Prayer. And that was in Linda's book that I had, her autobiography. So what I want you to notice here to definitely locate the property. You see that tree a little bit to the left-hand side, and you'll see a rising hill to the left-hand side going all the way up there. I want to point that out to you because we'll come to that as an important part of our discussion later on as through this talk. But now let's look at the building itself to locate it. So that is the chapel that was added by the Merton Center during its time it was there. I want you to recognize there are 3 dormers and a chimney a bit to the right. Also recognize the fact that there's a building set back a bit on the right, and we're going to definitely locate this place to be accurate in its location. So in our next slide, kind of difficult, but good thing is winter that maple tree has shed its leaves, but you will notice 3 dormers. One of them is actually in the trunk of the tree is the 3rd dormer, and you'll notice a chimney on the right, but there are 3 dormers like that painting I have shown you. And also notice that there's a building to the right, set back from it. So we know that would be the chapel that was made at that time. The next photograph, which is a little bit more clear, will show you then on the left side was that chapel that was added. Remember, I said the setback of the 2nd building, which is connected. You will see that as well on the right side. And to identify that as a restoration of the old building that was on the site, just recognize the fact of two windows in that area on the right-hand side in the gable. And so as we go to the painting again, next slide. Okay, this is Thomas Merton Center before restoration. You'll recognize those 2 windows in the gable side as being part of that old building. And so now we have photo of the old house before restoration. We now can say for sure that we have now the location totally confirmed without question. So now we got that together. Let's move on. Yes, okay, that's right. Who was Thomas Merton? A lot of people would not know, but most of you do know, of course. Thomas Merton's lifespan was from 1915 to 1968. He died at age 53. And there's a picture of Thomas Merton as you see it. Thomas Merton was born in Prades, France in 1915. As a 1-year-old, the family moved to Douglastown, Long Island, USA. Merton converted to Roman Catholicism while at Columbia University. At the age of 41, he entered an abbey in Kentucky, a community of monks belonged to the order of strict observant Trappists, a Roman Catholic monastic order. Merton became an influential American author, and the next slide, please, will show you a plaque. And if you notice at the bottom is his autobiography, The 7-Story Mountain, 1948, earned international acclaim. He was buried there at the Abbey Cemetery. So he wrote over 70 books and hundreds of poems and articles on topics ranging from monastic spirituality to civil rights, nonviolence, and the nuclear arms race. In the 1960s, Merton became the conscience of race, peace, and nonviolent civil rights movement in the United States. Merton endured severe criticism from Catholics and non-Catholics who felt strongly that his political writing was unbecoming of a monk. In Bangkok, on December 10th, 1968, Merton was the victim of an accidental electrocution, the result of 3 possible theories, being suicide, distraught over former lover, or electrocution. Guess which one was chosen? All right, so now we're going to talk about the establishment of Thomas Merton Centers across the USA. Thomas Merton Centers was co-founded by Molly Rush and Larry Kessler in 1972 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 4 years after Merton's death. 1972. Remember this date, it's more important in my talk later on. The Merton Center was formed to continue the beliefs of Thomas Merton. The Merton Center actively engaged against federal cutbacks, raised money for medical aid and world hunger. The Merton Center also actively engaged, organized against exploitation of workers, militarism, racial discrimination, nuclear disarmament, and other social issues. For example, the Merton Center was active in protesting against the Vietnam and Gulf Wars and the Iraqi invasion. The Merton Center is still active in the political arena today. In a nutshell, the Merton Center has 4 key focus areas today. That is peace and nonviolence, human rights against oppression, environmental justice, and economic justice. Now we get to the interesting part. Enter Linda Miroslava Zabath, the Georgeville connection with the Merton Center. Well, first, we're going to start with Linda's early life. And let's have that next slide then, please. So, The Unveiling of God, 2010, Linda Zabath autobiography. A lot of material comes from this book as you see it. So, Linda Miroslava Prozak was born to Ukrainian parents in Saskatchewan farming community. Her father was a revolutionary, atheistic Russian communist, God-hating, and gun-toting man who married his cousin. That is Linda's mother. Her father moved the family as far away from Christian relatives as possible. As a result, in 1930, the family moved to Guelph, Ontario, when Linda was 4 years old. Linda and her 2 brothers were kept away from Christians as much as possible, since the family, being anarchists, believed that no laws applied to them. Guelph in that area was known to have an active communist party that was under constant surveillance. People from foreign countries and members of the Communist Party of Canada gathered at their home. Linda's father was deported back to the Ukraine due to his association with the Communist Party. And in no surprise, he quickly returned under a new name. According to Linda, her father was a strict disciplinarian, beating her and her 2 brothers until their skin split open at times. On the other hand, her father believed and practiced homeschooling, such that all children excelled academically. Linda's father's creed was to redistribute wealth, take from the rich and give to the poor. From that early learning, Linda would steal from cash registers and give the stolen money to other children, just like Robin Hood. At age 17, Linda would steal mink coats and anything else she wanted. There was only one commandment: don't get caught. Linda's father insisted that she watch him perform abortions on her mother. At age 12, Linda's mother fell ill due to complications from many abortions. That is when Linda's father, who believed in free love, turned to Linda. Linda ran away from home, but was forced to return a number of times until she was sent to a reform school. At age 16, Linda was placed in a foster home in Galt, Ontario. In her own words, Linda said that she became a monster who hated everyone, including men, women, and children. Linda failed 3 years in high school, partially because of her father was stalking her after he was released from jail where he was serving a sentence for child molestation. Finally, Linda graduated from high school and moved to Montreal. And the next slide will show you a picture of her. Next slide, please. There we are. So it says Linda Zabath as a young woman of the world. I think her name at that time was probably Linda Prozak. So Linda enrolled in McGill University, studying philosophy and psychology. In Montreal, Linda met and married Stuart Parsons, becoming Linda Parsons. Together, they had 3 children. Next slide will show them. Very nice picture. There's Linda on the right, and with 3 children, Pamela on the left, Brian, the son, and another daughter, Susan, on the right. According to Linda, her husband, Stuart Parsons, an alcoholic, became increasingly abusive and included threats to kill family and himself, being diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. With her 3 children, Linda moved to an apartment. Linda found work as a researcher in religious experience at McGill University in the 1960s with the Department of Psychiatry. This was a life changer for Linda. The experience at McGill University, in Linda's words, I have changed from being a subhuman monster consumed by anger, fear, hate, and viciousness into someone who is feeling love and compassion towards everyone around me. It would appear that Linda was consumed with powerful ecstasies of religious experience. During this period of time, Linda and a co-worker organized the R.M. Buck Memorial Society. This is a study of religious experience. Founded to honor Richard Morris Buck, the lifespan of 1837 to 1902, who graduated from McGill University Medical School and eventually became head of Ontario Province Society in London, Ontario. Linda's job was to invite scholars to write for the newsletter. This is when the name Thomas Merton came up, and our story begins on that, of course. Merton and Linda began writing back and forth between 1965 to 1968, the year he died, of course, 75 letters in over 36 months. That is intensive communication, I'm sure you can see. This convinced Linda to become a Catholic. Merton became Linda's living antenna, with Linda visiting Merton at his monastery, which rarely allowed visitors. That is quite a privilege. During that visit, Merton suggests that he and Linda together create economical spiritual retreat. Linda readily agreed. The creation of a special retreat was put in motion with Merton before his untimely death. Within 1 year of Linda's in-person meeting with Merton, he traveled to Bangkok and died there in 1968. This was the start of Linda's career as a spiritual director. After Merton's death, Linda created the Thomas Merton Center of Contemplative Prayer in a retreat center that she directed in Georgeville for approximately 9 years, from 1969 to 1978. Note, this is 1 year after Merton's death, less than 1 year after Merton's death. Linda was ahead of the curve and established the first Merton Center in 1969. That is 3 years before the official founding of the U.S. Merton Center in Pittsburgh in 1972, which I referenced to you earlier. Linda had personal contact with Merton. That included correspondence and visitation. The Pittsburgh Merton chapter only celebrated his teachings, having never had a formal connection with Merton himself. Divorcing Stuart Parsons, Linda left with no alimony or financial support for their 3 children. However, Linda received $10,000 insurance money from an apartment fire where she lived with her 3 children. It was Dr. Slater, the Anglican minister in Georgeville, who had suggested to Linda that a farm in Georgeville might be the perfect place to build a retreat center. On that advice, Linda purchased a 135-acre farm with a rundown house, being lots 93, 97, and 110 in Canton de Stansted from John C. Dustin for $15,000 on June the 13th, 1969. So let's have the next slide up. It'll show you the deed, or at least part of it. There you go. So there are 3 lots, as I mentioned to you before. 93 would have the main house on it. 97, 110 would be property without buildings added to 93. So it was registered in Canton de Stansted, July 9th, 1969 for all 3 lots. Down payment was $4,000 from the $10,000 insurance money, with a mortgage of $11,000 with 132 monthly payments, that is for 11 years at $83.33 without interest until paid. Not a bad deal, even for that time period.
Jerry.
Somebody talking? We'll carry on. Incidentally, this is the same property that Richard Kopp, son of Moses Kopp, founder of Georgeville, purchased in 1807. And so let's show that one on the next slide. There you go. You can see Georgeville. Oh, no, that's the one. That's the one. So that you can see Georgeville on the top part, and you can see lot 93 with X on it. It's not quite accurate. You can see 97 behind it. Beside it, that is was the original Richard Kopp farm. Included on the property is the Hill Cemetery, where Richard Kopp and members of his family are buried, including other well-known members of Georgeville. So now we'll look at the old farmhouse before restoration. Next slide, please. There you go. So that's the old farmhouse before restoration. Man, it had a long way to go. This old farmhouse may well have been built that by Richard Cobb. According to Linda, lived like a hermit with her 3 children, eating garbage from dumpsters before living on welfare. The Benedictine monks from the abbey, aware of their spiritual neighbor, supported them with food and goodwill throughout the life of the center. From the beginning, the Merton Center was a ramshackle farmhouse, which an architect had advised burn it down and start over. The house had gaping holes in the floor with no heat or water, gathering wood for the fireplace to keep warm during the winter. But the Merton Center in Georgeville, it became. Now we're at the Georgeville Center and the Merton Center has started. Now we're going to talk about the rules, rituals, life within the Thomas Merton Center here in Georgeville. And that's taken from the book, the other book, which is called In the Center by Rogers. So the word got out that this old broken down farmhouse was full of God. Almost immediately, people from all over North America, priests, nuns, lay people, including Buddhists, Hindus, and mostly Catholics, came to the new founded Merton Center in Georgeville. Remember that Thomas Merton had already put this into motion. That's why it happened so quickly for Linda. Now, enter Peter Sabbath, a confused young Jewish boy searching for meaning in his life, heard about the Merton Center and arrived in 1970. Peter became Linda's manager and co-director of the Merton Center, and they were married in 1973. Here's a photo of them. Next slide, please. And there it is, Peter and Linda Sabbath at the Thomas Merton Center. Linda Parsons became Linda Sabbath, Peter being 20 years younger. Peter converted to Catholicism and was baptized in 1976 at the Merton Center, eventually becoming a Roman Catholic priest in 1998. 3 visiting nuns found the Merton Center to be a cesspool with one overflowing toilet, and after 1 week said, "The Lord told us to leave." The retreat began with a personal breath prayer. Example, "Lord, have mercy on me, for I am a sinner," or "Lord, give me the courage to live a better life," or "May your spirit set me free." The breath prayer would change during their stay to reflect progress. The retreats forbade reading, letters, radio, TV, or other distractions. Each retreatment person was allowed to write a single paragraph per day that was monitored. And now if we go to the next slide, it'll be significant. Okay, the objective being to be totally absorbed in their breath prayers, followed by scripture readings while focusing upon a brown square with a gold circle in the center for up to half-hour periods. And of course, this is appropriately the cover of the book, In the Center as you see it. The stay at the retreatment included working in silence while performing household duties, gardening, growing crops, raising cattle, sheep, chicken, lambs, repairing the buildings, and adding a chapel onto the main house, which you have seen earlier. The retreatments were taught to consciously raise the sexual energies from the lower body into the desires of the heart so they can become part of the creative life of God. I'll read that over again. The retreatments were taught to consciously raise the sexual energies from the lower body into the desires of the heart so they can become part of the creative life of God. According to Linda, during this period, some priests and monks were eyeing their son, and a Swiss monk had molested their 7-year-old daughter. Linda, feeling pity for their actions, she sent them to other places. And the next photo will show you a picture of a number of monks and people that were there at the Merton Center gathering monks. Interesting how many people are there. So this was a Catholic retreat. Initially, the retreat accepted all religions, but eventually accepted only Catholics. Monks only came as guests. So now let's go to the next slide. There we go. Within the retreat, Father Sabbath placed 3 birch crosses at the top of the hill, setting up an altar with candles and flowers for special occasions. According to Linda, hoping for a monastery to be built on that location someday. Now, Locating this photograph was difficult, but I had help from the Georgeville virtual town crier. When I say virtual town crier, I'm referring to Judy Batchelor. Unable to find a photograph of the crosses on the hill, Judy posted my request for a picture of the cross in What's On. George Dennis answered that call for help, hence this photo. Thank you, George. Now, originally there were 3 crosses, one on the left, one on the right, with the cross of the crown on it. The cross with the crown represents a kinship of Christ that refers to Gospel of John 19:19, verse 22. The birch cross on the hill are the celebration of the Eucharist. In celebration, truth, light, fullness of all men are one, mankind is one, and God is one. So now we'll go and see where this is with respect to the Merton Center itself. The next slide will kind of show us that. So what you see here is where the crosses roughly were placed. Way down in the center, you see a house. That is now a private residence, but that was once the Merton Center. So you can see the view all the way down there. Now we'll go to the next slide. And that one will show you on the left. Remember, I pointed out to you that rising hill on the left of that tree that indicates where those crosses were. So rising slope becomes very apparent in that picture. Okay, so we'll carry on now. Yeah, we'll get there. The process, that's okay. The process of each treatment was the healing of memories, not guilt or sin, but forgiveness and grace. Every person in the retreat worked on their past from early childhood to the present, surrendering to God for whatever it was. And now the next photo, Jesus with sun rays, as you've seen that many times, I'm sure. The final phase of the retreat was the heart-to-heart prayer as they gazed at the picture of Jesus with golden rays spreading outwards. During this period, the maximum capacity for the Merton Center was 20 to 30 people, achieved many times. Usual numbers would be 10 to 15 people from North America and all over Europe. The stay at the Merton Center ranged from a weekend to a month, and in some cases as much as 2 years. The cost to attend the Merton Center was $500 to $600 to $700 a month, depending on the situation. The Merton Center in Georgeville was in operation for about 9 years, 1969 to 1978. So in 1978, no more the Merton Center. We're talking about the post-Merton Center, Georgeville. That is, the Georgeville Merton Center was now closed. Linda went to Santa Barbara to visit Barbara Rogers, and the author of the book about Rogers' experience at the Merton Center in the center, the book you've seen before. This is Rogers stayed at the Merton Center for an extended period of time in order to write the book in the center. And that's the one that has the square and the circle in the center of it. Returning to the farm, oh, sorry, I better go back a bit. While Linda was away, there was a fire and the farmhouse was damaged with no one hurt. Returning to the farm, Linda tidied up to either rent or sell the property. The farm was then rented to Anglican minister Keith Dickerson, December 1978, as a retreat bed and breakfast. And that was in the 97 or 93 lot. You saw Audrey Dickerson signing for that rent at that time. So we know that the Merton Center had then totally discontinued. Linda and Peter subsequently opened the St. Monica House Merton Center in Montreal, but not as a retreat. Linda Zabas subsequently sold the property roughly in around 1986. Linda and Peter moved to Rome. Both met Pope John Paul II at that time, and Peter became a deacon. Linda received an Anglican degree in spirituality theory and pastoral counseling, and that's the next one. Photo. Linda worked in Mother Teresa's soup kitchen in Rome, as she did before in the Bronx of New York. During this time, Linda and Peter Sabbath separated and the marriage was annulled. Now, what happened to Linda and Peter Zabeth? Firstly, we'll talk about Peter Zabeth. My mission was finding Peter Zabeth. Peter was 20 years younger when he married Linda. Linda was 86 when she died in 2013. In 2021, Linda would be 94. That would make Father Peter Zabeth age 74, my age. I speculated that being a Catholic priest, Peter would not be a smoker, nor overweight, and not a heavy drinker other than wine within his vocation. Using Google search, I found Peter Zabeth. We met at his parish hall in February 2020. Peter became a priest in 1998. Marriage to Linda was annulled in late 1980s. In 2003 to 2015, for 12 years, Father Zabeth was a priest at the Holy Name of Jesus in Laval, Quebec. In 2015 to present, Father Zabeth is a priest at St. Thomas Becket Church in Pierrefonds, Quebec. Now, Linda Zabeth. Linda returned to North America in 1988. No home, no money. Her grown children at that time had basically shut her out. Somehow, during this time, Linda managed to visit New York, Jordan, Israel, California, all being religious travels. Finally, Linda moved to Ottawa and reunited with her family. And that's the next photo. Next slide. There is Linda with her grandchildren and smiling, and that looks very nice. Okay, Linda started to paint icons and writing poetry. Some icons are located in the Canadian History Museum in Gatineau. And there's the next picture on this. You'll see that she's with one of her, Linda's out with her Native American icons. She did a number of those and different ones, all generally religious. As part of the Artist Jubilee in 2000, Linda met with Pope John Paul II a second time. So let's see that one on the next slide. It got into the newspaper, Canadian artist meets Pope John Paul II. So Linda, having settled in Ottawa, passed away in January 14, 2013 in her 86th year, and is buried in the Highland Cemetery in Carp, Ontario. So let's go to that next photo, Highland Park Cemetery, and let's go to the next one. And here we go. Prozac Sabbath, Linda Miroslava, June 13th, 1926 to January 14, 2013. We stay strong and shed no tears. Linda's unlimited, relentless energy in her newfound religion lasts her entire lifetime, which is to be admired by all. A remarkable journey in life. And now we can end the PowerPoints, please, as I carry on. Thank you. Good job. Okay, now I want to talk to you. We've got two more topics to go. John Merton Center internationally, which has been mentioned at the beginning. It was William Shannon who created the International Thomas Merton Society in 1987. Only then would it include Canada. Archives are stored at the Thomas Merton Center in Bellarmine University campus, Louisville, Kentucky. The Merton Center today offers research, retreats, scholarships, and grants. Presently, there are 65 chapters across the world, 40 in the United States. Example, Canada being one chapter has affiliates across the country, mostly at universities, community colleges, churches, across most provinces. Locally, there is one in Côte Saint-Luc, Quebec. And now, conclusion. Here we go. My research reveals and concludes that the Merton Center in Georgeville was a one-off. That is to say, it was never a chapter of the Merton Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, founded in 1972, nor part of the International Merton Centers created in 1987. That is to say, the Merton Center in Georgeville was created by Linda Parsons through her powerful religious experience as a standalone that she organized and operated for approximately 9 years from 1969 to 1978. One can only speculate what the Merton Center in Georgeville could have become had Thomas Merton not met his untimely death in 1968. But one can still say that Georgeville became the home of the first Merton Center in the world in 1969. And that is it. Thank you for attending my talk in the Merton Center today. I now turn the proceedings over to Keith Wilcox, our president of Georgeville Historical Society. Keith, take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Martin. That was really quite informative and fascinating. I really knew nothing at all about this, and I am so much more informed right now, that's for sure. We could, at this point, go for some questions. I think if anyone has questions for Martin, this would be the time to ask them. So if you would like to do that, just either raise your hand or start to speak. I can usually see you if you start to speak. Doreen.
I just have a quick question. The Unveiling of God, what year was that book written?
I do have it, the book here. Good thing. Yeah. Let me see now. I got the book here. I think it was 210. Yeah. Published 2010.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I've done too good of a job. If you don't ask for a lot of questions, I've done too good of a job.
Gail, go ahead.
Well, we live just on the Georgeville Road near the end of the East Road. And we were on the same party line for the telephone as the Thomas Merton Center all that time. And the phone never stopped ringing. It was incredible. And it seemed to be full of the Vietnam draft dodgers at that time. So it was a very, very busy time, and certainly a very busy time for our telephone.
Yeah, Gail, that's interesting you say that. There must be a number of residents still here that have got experience just like you said. So any memories, we certainly would like to hear them. So speak up if you wish. Now is a good time. Any questions? Carry on.
The crosses, are they still there? Because Dina and I went cross-country skiing probably maybe almost 60 years ago, and we saw those crosses.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, Doreen.
are they,
No, they are
Yes.
not there. They are not there, Doreen. I remember cross-country skiing and seeing two of them, just like that picture that you've seen that
okay,
that he took. They are totally gone. It'd be interesting if one could find that
Okay.
crown that was on top of that center cross. Where it went to, I have no idea. But no, they are not there. The picture I've shown you
Okay.
was where they were placed, and I show you where the Merton Center was way down that hill. But no, they're
Mhm.
not there.
Okay.
Stephen Moore. I think you have to unmute yourself, Steve.
Yeah,
There we
okay.
go.
Hi, Martin.
Hi.
I have a question about Linda's book. The first book that you mentioned, the Barbara, I forget the last name.
Barbara Rogers in the center.
Right. I read that book, and I believe there was not one reference to the village of Georgeville by name. It was all Magog. I was wondering, in Linda's book, if she mentioned Georgeville at all.
Yeah, it does. Like technically, it was not in Georgeville. That's why, Stephen.
Mhm.
It was not. It was RR3 Magog for sure. No, it just focused on the square on the center itself, unveiling of God. Spoke about the history which I've given you. It doesn't mention Georgeville. It doesn't even mention Magog. It just mentions what it is, from what I've
Okay.
read. Yeah.
I just found it very odd that in Barbara's book that being so close to Georgeville vis-a-vis Magog, that the village's name never came up.
Yeah, and that you're absolutely correct about that. Yep.
What was, Martin, it's Keith Wilcox here. What was the Merton Center's relationship with the village? The people in the village, what was their relationship to the center and the center's relationship to the village?
There wasn't a whole lot, but there are some people that would engage with it to some extent, but generally not. They're more or less left as a religious center on their own where they were, and people were aware of it. Contact was minimal. In fact, I spoke to Father Peter Zavith, as I told you. I met him in February and asked him a lot of questions. Unfortunately, I was planning on having him here as a surprise guest to answer the questions rather than me, which would be much more significant. Unfortunately, he's proceeding with a funeral today and could not make it. But that's unfortunately, we missed that one. So I think the communication was minimal. They did their own thing and they stayed within their own compound, and that was about it.
And did they do any work fixing that property up?
Oh yeah. For example, you saw the initial building, which I think was built by Richard Kopp in all probability, and they fixed that building. You saw the picture of the new place, that place today where it's a private residence. They added that chapel completely, and they renovated all of it. As I indicated in that talk, when all the people are in the retreatment, they had their duties, and one was building the chapel and fixing the building, raising cattle, and all of that material. So Keith Dickerson took it over, Minister Dickerson, which everybody here in Georgeville would know. And he stayed there for a number of years. And I remember I was talking to his son, John Dickerson. He said they would raise vegetables and cattle and all kinds of stuff in terms of supporting that B&B at that time.
So the people who resided in that building, they would have done the work, fix that property up.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks. Yes, Peter, go ahead.
It is Peter, not George. Anyway, minor detail. I took the picture back in 2001.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought, okay, correction. But thanks for the picture. So significant.
The other thing that I'd like to mention is that it's interesting that now the property is owned by the Lords.
Yes. I just simply call it a private residence because I didn't want to indicate that.
I believe Mary Ann had a question.
Mary Ann, sorry, I didn't see you.
It's Tim, actually. We rented the annex to that house from 87 to 93. The three crosses were certainly there at the time. And of course, as we've skied over the land many times since, they've gradually disappeared. But one thing you didn't mention, Martin, was the Stations of the Cross. There's a ski trail through the woods, which was obviously originally part of the retreat center and had the Stations of the Cross carved in numbered panels on the trees. I think only number 4 is left the last time I looked.
Interesting to say that, I would have included in my talk. It's not given or referred to at all in any of the 2 books I researched. So that's new knowledge. It sounds reasonable, but it was never mentioned in any of these books.
Any other questions?
Keith?
Yes.
I don't know if you can hear. Yeah, it's Bob Scott here. Sorry, my camera on my computer doesn't work, so I'm anonymous visually. But I just wanted to say I remember when I was a kid meeting the family and the daughter. My younger sister Melanie was a real social gadfly and free spirit, and so she immediately became friends with Susan. And so we used to, hang out together. I remember being invited for lunch there one day, and a memory I'll never forget. I mean, it was an extraordinary place. It didn't seem like there were that many people. I remember there were 2 buildings, and it struck me probably 15 to 20 people kind of in the area, and everyone ate lunch together. And it was probably in June. Because I remember them, it was the father who seemed like quite a stern fellow, but incredibly nice. They were all just super generous and friendly. And I didn't seem to be overwhelmed with kind of, monastic sense there. But it was they were vegetarians, and which was new to me. I guess probably 69 or 70 around then. So they were just getting going. So they looked like, I do remember the buildings being older and sort of a hive of activity around them, and there were chickens running around and, cows and stuff. But we ate a meal, they had a big garden, a fenced in garden, and the father apologized for all the vegetables being the last of the previous year's harvest, which again sort of blew my mind because it was absolutely fantastic meal. And I thought, boy, this in the fall when the food or the vegetables are fresh must have been absolutely amazing. So they really knew what they were doing, in terms of farming and preserving the food. And again, vegetarianism was, in my world, kind of a new thing I'd never experienced. And anyway, but I was quite small. I was probably, 12, 13 or something. And I remember getting into a wrestling match with Susan, the daughter, who was probably 2 years younger than me or so. And being pinned to the ground by her. And I felt like there were like steel pistons holding me down. And I thought, boy, this is life on the farm. And her older brother and the father, they seemed, in my imagination, they're like 3 times bigger. And I said, I can't even imagine what wrestling one of those guys would be like. But I do recall that Susan kind of came to the village, you know, I saw her a few times, you know, probably was over one you know, month-long period of time when I was here. But I think that the brother, he didn't come, and she said, no, they don't really visit here, you know, the town itself. So I think I do get the impression, and I never saw them around either. They really did keep to themselves. But an absolutely wonderful bunch of people. Just, it was literally walking onto that property and having a meal with them. I just felt spiritually uplifted in a mysterious way I couldn't explain, and it's always stayed with me. But that, you know, you just felt the kind of, there's a commitment and a real sense of purpose and real optimism, you know. So maybe it was early on it would have been, say, 69, 70. So I can't remember the exact year, you know. Anyway, so I just, you know, ask about sort of if there was anybody who'd had personal memories of the family, and I certainly do. And as I say, but they were extraordinarily nice people. Although I don't think I met the mother. I just don't recall that. But I remember they must have been other sort of people visiting and learning and working, you know. But there was a great deal of kind of camaraderie, you know, it seemed like, as I say, a shared sense of purpose, you know. And that's my memory of and definitely on the East Road. I remember walking up there, and sort of on the left, not that far down, you know.
Yeah, Bob, your experience is correct, but not many had association with it, which verifies what I'm saying. They kept to their farm and they practiced their retreat as they did, and that was about all they did.
Okay, yeah, and well, I had an enormous crush on Susan, so that was my motivation.
That's how you got there, I
That's
guess.
how, yeah. But I just remember talking about, like, I think like I don't know if they did, but they probably took the school bus. But I got the feeling, you know, they walked, you know, in giant blizzards through the snow to school 10 miles away or something, you know.
Bob, it's Judy Land answering, and my original name is Judy Drew, and I grew up several houses down from, it was when I grew up, Cynthia Dustin was the child that played in that house.
Oh,
And
fascinating,
yeah, I have been in that house playing as a young child before the taking over by the as a Merton Center. My father was the bus driver on the East Road, originally taking over from Stan Hutchins and driving to Georgeville, and then afterwards driving to Magog and eventually driving to Galt. He did stop at that location and pick up children for the school bus. That is a period of time when I personally was away at university. So I only have a passing knowledge of the center, know exactly where it is, know the prehistory, know the post-history, don't really know the history of the time.
Yeah, at the time, yeah, but as I say, I really got, and I never, you know, it was one short period of time I did see them, and then not really much at all. So they may have even sort of, you know, laid down the hammer a little bit and said, no, you know, we don't want you, you know, visiting the heathens in Georgeville. I mean, 15 minutes with my younger sister, and the daughter would have been a free spirit. I mean, you know, so I did get the feeling they were quite strict, you know. I got that feeling of sort of there were rules, you know.
Any other questions?
Yes, I don't have a question, but I have a comment, Keith. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead,
Okay.
Maureen.
And I was away during the time of the Merton Center, but there is a family connection. The original house that you showed, where Linda bought the original house, was the house that my mother was born in 108 years ago.
Wow.
So that's our connection.
How long did your mom live in that house?
I have no idea. I wasn't there.
Okay, I guess not.
But that was Adelaide Atkin. Adelaide Hand was her maiden name, and they were living in that building just shortly after. When mother was born in 1917.
Wow,
That's my bit.
thank you. Anyone else with personal memories of that part of Georgeville, or having been in the house, or having met the people who were there? General impressions or specific ones? Martin, you mentioned that the life there seemed like a pretty strict one, and Bob said the same thing. It makes me wonder about Linda's own upbringing in her own family. I wonder if that was in keeping with the teachings of the Merton Center in general, or are you in any position to comment on that?
Well, can't really comment on that because the Merton Centers, as now you know, has never been connected in the U.S. and or international. The strictness, Linda's upbringing was unbelievable, as you now have heard, and to do a 180-degree turn in a religious experience is phenomenal, which she maintained through her whole life, which is incredible. The credit goes to her. But one thing I want to mention in terms of, and I asked Father Peter Zabeth about the connection of the Merton Center here in Georgeville with the new chapter that started in 1972 in Pittsburgh. So I'll give you a little bit of information on that. So back in 1972, Linda Parsons wrote a letter to the new Merton chapter in Pennsylvania, one letter. And the letter came back saying, thank you. That's about it. In other words, they chose not to associate with each other at all. Just to mention, if you go on the internet and you look at Linda's correspondence with Merton, all those 78 letters are all there. You can't read them. You just give you a first little sentence on it. If you want to read it, you'll have to fly over to the university and sign your life away to read them. They're that well protected. So those are all personal letters that Linda had with Merton himself. Nobody else have ever experienced that whatsoever. Only Linda Parsons did at that time. So anyway, 78 letters, 2 letters in 1972 saying, hi, we're here. Thank you. Goodbye. That was about it. There was never any connection of the Merton Center, because it's only national in the US, with Merton Center here in Georgeville. Now, fast forward to letters of 2004, communication between the Pennsylvania Center and Linda. And what happened, from what I can gather, is in 2004, Linda donated all her letters, correspondence with Merton, to that center, and it is at the university. So I can tell by looking at it, enough to give the donation form, what to do, whatever. There were 3 entry dates in 04 between them, and then it ended. So I believe in 04, Linda donated all that to the center, and that was the end of that communication. So Georgeville never was a chapter of any of it. It's a standalone, as I said, but still the first one in the world. And as I mentioned to you earlier, what's be interesting, if Merton's untimely death did not happen, we have no idea how this would look like here in Georgeville in terms of, because he had a following. It's pretty obvious what happened. Linda was right there the first time with him, and the only one that met him ever at the Abbey, which was allowed. A very interesting story, and what she did is unbelievable with a man that has such standing today, even today in the world internationally, that she had that connection.
Fascinating indeed. Any other questions? If not, I would like to invite John Atkin to say a few words in appreciation of Martin's talk.
Martin, thank you very much for introducing us to Thomas Merton and to the important role that Linda Parsons has played in this worldwide movement. Certainly the world needs more peace and understanding. That was interesting to learn that the world's first Thomas Merton Center began right here in Georgeville, of all places. Martin has given us an informed and enlightened view of Georgeville's connection to this renowned visionary. And I'd like to thank you very much, Martin, on the behalf of Georgeville Historical Society for giving this wonderful talk today.
John, thank you very much for that comment. And I think we now have a more understanding of the Merton Center while it was here. It's
Yes.
part of our archives now, which anybody can view what we're seeing right now down the road. And those memories are important. Thank you.
I was aware of the Thomas Merton Center, as most people living in Georgeville, but had really little understanding of what actually transpired there. And this is quite a revelation for me to learn all this information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you, Martin. Before we adjourn this morning, we have a little gift for Martin in an expression of our appreciation for the work he's done in preparing for this. He had originally planned to do this talk last summer, but of course, COVID derailed all of that. And Martin, you've been at it, I would say, at least a couple of years, maybe more, in doing the research, and your thinking has evolved over time as you've done it, which is often the case the longer you spend doing it. But really, we are the beneficiaries and recipient of this knowledge and this work you've done, and we'd like to thank you very much. So Judy Batchelder has kindly agreed to pass on to you something that we would like you to have in appreciation, as an expression of our appreciation for the work.
Here she comes.
Thank you very much.
Look at this. Can we see this?
Oh, my goodness.
You have to
Oh,
hold
here's
it.
your ring.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Don't need my ring.
Lift it up. Lift it.
It's McGowan House. There we go. And very good from Keith. Very good. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting story. I think a lot of you are probably surprised in terms of her early life and all the things that went on in her life, trauma, and to finally come through the Georgeville Center and come through on that. I think it's a story that's absolutely remarkable that you probably did not expect. The conclusion that I gave you came in about the last 2-3 months. It takes a while. You read a story and look at the story and you ask yourself questions, and you ask yourself more questions. You go search those questions. For Father Peter Zabeth is one. And then me putting all those, dotted those lines together and come to that conclusion. If I gave this speech a year ago, you would not have heard that conclusion. And I think that conclusion is rather important in the whole context of this Georgeville Center that was here. Anyway, enough said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd also like to thank, there were a few people who really worked hard to put this together. Judy Batchelder and Ariane Etta Hadaya, who actually ran the slides for us this morning and did the work on the PowerPoint, making sure the slides came up when they were intended to come up. Worked very hard together with Martin at the loft over the last few days and weeks to make this all possible. So I think we should also be aware of that, and I'd like to express my appreciation for that work that they all did working on this together. It was truly a collective effort. I guess that's it for.
Oh,
for
Keith,
today.
I got one more thing to say. I got paid for this.
Oh, you did? Wow.
Yeah, I did. I got a gift certificate, $100 to go to McGowan House. I can celebrate $100. I'm going to take my spouse, Nancy.
All right.
I guess we'll allow you to do that.
Yeah, I got paid. That's very generous.
Well, you're a generous guy. You're always advocating generosity on behalf of the GHS for other people. So I think it's only fair that we return the gesture. Anyways, thank you all so much for coming out this morning. This was the first time we've ever done this on Zoom. I don't know what will happen down the road. We might end up doing a mix of Zoom and in person. You never know, but next summer we hope to be back in person, and perhaps with the help of Zoom as well. It's been a wonderful morning. Thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you soon. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.